Hello there, friends. Welcome back. I'm gonna bring something into the frame, kind of close up, because I want to show you something. This is a Tapco Tumble Stones refill kit. Complete refill kit for Tumble Stones rock polisher. And you can't deny the early 1970s goodness of this image right here. You've got who I presume to be brother and sister, and you've got a rock polisher, the Tumble Stones. It's got a barrel here that you would have rocks and an abrasive grit in, and a little cradle with some rollers powered by a motor that would turn this thing over and over. You got various grits and polishes here. You've got some rough stones. You've got some polished stones over here. They're twinkling, so that's how we know they're polished. And then some jewelry hardware here. In the 1970s, craft-based hobbies were just crazy popular, and rock polishing was one of those. And it was really marketed as a way to make your own jewelry. And I had one of these when I was a kid that I used maybe twice, or maybe 1.5 times. I don't know why I didn't stick with it, but I found this the other day, and after thinking about it a little while, I started to realize how great a metaphor the process of tumbling stones is for some of the topics that we talk about on the channel, like patience and fighting the need to have instant gratification for everything. Polishing a batch of stones actually takes quite a while. It takes about a month. You would have these supplies, grits and polishes, and in Tapco's case, this little container of little plastic beads. They called this filler. The idea behind filler is that it would cushion the stones as they tumbled over and over in the barrel, and also help distribute the abrasive grit. Plus they make a cool sound. And then these two little containers are proof that I didn't finish whatever the last batch of stones was that I tried to polish as a kid, because this is a container of fine grit. it would go coarse, medium, and fine. So this would be the third stage in the process. And then this is a container of polish. This would be the last step in the process. And these two items are so fine and small that I can't even hear them make a sound when I shake them. It's kind of amazing. But then we have this barrel. Polishing stones is essentially a controlled experiment in erosion. You put some rocks of a certain hardness in here with some abrasive grit and some water and run them. Let them turn over and over for a week. Then stop it and take it out. Clean everything up really good. Put in some more water and the next stage of grit and run it for another week. And I found this the other day, and it's got some polished stones in it, and they're not amazing, and some of them have chips and cracks from being drug around from house to house that I've lived in over the years, apparently. But I wanted to go through these and maybe sort them in some relaxing way, perhaps by color. That might be a good way to do it. And remember that, as we talked about a few videos ago, remember what a luxury it is to just sit and focus on a simple thing for a few minutes. And since I can always do a better job of taking my own advice, I thought we could try to do that today. This lid had a rubber O-ring in it to keep the barrel from leaking. Although I imagine that rubber is pretty hard and brittle now. And not so good at preventing leaks. So let's get these out of the barrel and take a look at what we have. Always fascinated by rocks when I was a kid. There were a good collection of years in my youth during which, if you had asked me what I wanted to be. When I grew up, I would have said a geologist, because based on my research at the time, such as it was, it seemed like a geologist would be the profession that would allow me to make a living while playing with rocks. Life didn't go that way, of course, but it does make me wonder a bit now why I didn't polish a lot more rocks when I was a kid, since I did have the polisher. What we see here is a bit of a grab bag. There are stones in here that I did indeed polish with that Rapco tumbler when I was a kid. But there are also stones in here, perhaps the majority of them, that the kids have added to the barrel over the years, mostly from our trips down to the Red River Gorge area of Kentucky. There's lots of little souvenir shops down there where you can, dig through sand for polished stones. And several of those have made it into the collection as well. It's interesting how just something like a stone can serve as a talisman to help remember a certain time in our lives, a certain chapter. If I had to point to one of these as a particularly emblematic stone of that period, I would have to point to this fellow here. It's nothing special, just a bit of banded amethyst. When quartz is purple, we call it amethyst. And this particular piece, is alternating between purple quartz and clear or white quartz. But I distinctly remember this one as one of two big chunks of amethyst that I was fascinated by. This is also amethyst, but it's not one of the two I remember. You can see that this one is, it's been through a lot. It's got a big chip right there and some cracks. A serious and dedicated rock polisher would probably have discarded this piece after the coarse grind stage if these cracks were evident. You don't want to spend all your time and resources on cracked stones. They might break apart when you're tumbling them and scratch up other things. Of course, that wasn't really a concern of mine back in the day when I was a kid. I just thought it was fascinating to take a stone that just looked rough and dull and have it come out looking like something like this at the end of it. That transformative process I found very compelling. Plus the polishing process works like a cross-section in a way. It gives you a view of what's happening inside the stone that you just wouldn't get otherwise. To be able to see these, how dynamic these shapes are, how organic. And you think about the processes that would have formed something like this, that we can now peer at millions of years later. That controlled erosion. If you've ever walked in a stream bed and you see that all the stones in the stream bed are rounded and smooth, polishing stones is essentially imposing that process on a group of rocks in an accelerated way. But it still takes a month. I haven't done this since I was a kid, but even just handling these now, I'm still a sucker for this stuff. Look at that. So that kind of iridescence you get with tiger eye or cat eye. I was never an expert on the various names of the stones. Look at that. I love the stones where they just seem to come alive when you hold them in certain ways. Like there's a life to them. There's a couple more in here I'd like to take a close look at, but why don't we do that in the context of trying to sort these a bit? I want to keep all of them in frame, but maybe we'll start to rearrange them in little groups based on what we see from a color perspective. And three that jump out at me right away are these three large bluish stones. Of course, actual rock polishing enthusiasts might stumble across this video, and I hope you'll chime in the comments the specific types of stones that we have here. I'd love to have a list. But those three are pretty easy. And then, of course, we know purple is a color in our group. Let's take another look at that banded amethyst. Poor thing's been through a bit of a go of it as well. Why don't we make a purple group? Let's see. We can put these next to the blues, but we have a couple of other purple rocks that are not amethyst. They have a bit of glitter in them, almost like a metallic paint, but they're purple. So, oh, this is even different. Look at that. Oh, yeah. It really jumps out of the hand, doesn't it? Look at that. Kind of that layered iridescence. So we kind of have a blue group and a purple group. Let's see, this guy would go with the purple group. You know, when I think about sorting by color, I think about crayons. I think about a huge bucket of broken crayons that I would have as a kid and lining them up on the floor, sorting them by color. I wonder, perhaps even then it had the same kind of calming, centering effect that it does now. What about this fellow? He's kind of a pale green with some interesting inclusions here. Do we have enough for a green group? Maybe over here in this part of the frame. Well, this guy is a bit of a well, I love this one. He's got a lot going on. Kind of blue, kind of green. In fact, maybe we'll put green on this side, and this blue-green fellow can be kind of a transitional piece in between. Let's kind of put our purple there, put our blue there. Do we have anything else that could be green? Now you can see on this stone there are these large areas that never got polished. And I'm sure, again, a serious hobbyist would have either discarded this after the first phase, or they might have been smart enough to see that, these fissures never would have polished correctly, and they wouldn't even try to polish something like this. And if your goal is to get a completely smooth, shiny rock, I totally agree with that. But I will say that I find the contrast between the smooth and the rough to be quite compelling. It's not something you would use for jewelry, but I'm a big fan of the visual variety here. But color-wise, what would we say? There's this blue-green streak, but it's also fairly neutral through here. I think for lack of a better home, we'll put him in the corner with the greens and the green blues. So how about a section based around this color? The reddish, the pinkish, perhaps the orangish. There's a lot going on here too. I love the stones that seem a little motley, a little confused perhaps, or the ones that contain multitudes, as this one does. What if we collect a group in this area? Got to look at this one again because this iridescent banding. I know cat eye is kind of an amber, and no, tiger eye is kind of amber, right? Is cat eye that's kind of gray, kind of neutral? This is more red. I don't know what this would be called. We'll put him here. Let's see. Going to kind of group the oranges in as well. Brings us to this fellow. Again, I love if you look at it one way, it looks kind of uniform. You look at it another way, and its true personality is revealed. And how about this one? This one is very pure. You can see a fracture. Again, probably would have disqualified it, or should have, but I like how blocky and brick-like this is. It's a natural stone, but almost an unnatural geometry. I like the juxtaposition of those two concepts. Let's see. All right, looking at kind of transitioning. If we've got red-ish here, how about pinkish? Don't know how pink this come across in the light, but we've got this one. Kind of put them off to the side of the reds. Then also this one. Kind of that blocky geometry again, with lots of little fractures. Have you ever seen the cracked marbles? Sometimes used in ceramic lamps and things. Adds visual interest to the marble that they're able to crack like that but not fall apart. This rock kind of reminds me of a cracked marble. Let's see. These weren't part of a group yet, were they? Oh. Almost overlooked this guy. Look at this. Oh, yeah. There it is. Yeah, I do hope someone is able to educate us on what all of these stones are. It seems like the ones that are getting pushed to the bottom here are more and more neutral in their look. I wonder if maybe we can base a black or gray pile around this fellow. Is this hematite? I didn't know if hematite was a polishing stone or not. No, it must be, right? I've seen these in gift shops and things. Anything that's black and all black and shiny, I automatically think is hematite, although I don't know if that's right. So let's see about our neutral ones. Look at that. Put him there. Oh, wow. So this is predominantly gray and neutral. You can almost imagine that this was the outside of the rock, and then it was broken open and revealed this on the inside. I think we're going to put him in this pile for now. Another nice example. You know, this is still a very active hobby today, and you can buy, rough stone to use in tumblers by the pound. And getting good rough material to start with has a lot to do with the quality of the polished stones that you get in a month at the end of the process. One thing is that they have to be, or it works best if they're of very similar hardnesses, which makes sense, right? Because you're doing an experiment in controlled erosion, and all of the stones in the barrel are going to be acted on by the same grit for the same length of time. So if you have a few stones that are softer than the others, they're going to wear away more quickly. They might even wear away to nothing. I have a memory when I was using this polishing kit for the first time that, I had this group of stones to start with, and that was nice, but I was very curious. I was very curious what would happen if I just took a stone from our driveway and threw it in with the other stones. So, based on what I just said about hardnesses, that's probably not a good idea. But I was a kid. I just wanted to see what would happen. And this rock right here is one of those driveway stones, I think. Don't don't know what it is, but it turned out to have this very interesting cross section. And in the box where I found the refill kit, I found this. And this, clearly, is a piece of this driveway gravel stone that broke off before I put it in the tumbler. I assume they went together something like this somehow before this one got polished. It's an interesting before and after, isn't it? The curious mind of a child, I suppose. And now, here we are looking at it all these years later. But I think he would go in our neutral pile. I think this neutral pile is bigger than all the other piles. Look at this fellow. This one has a lot to say. Look at that view. I love these inclusions that taper and get bigger in the middle like that. It's wonderful. It's like there's a universe in there somehow. Yeah, I think our black-gray pile is going to be our biggest, and we're going to extend it through here. It's a very nice, large, clear area of quartz, I assume, through here. If we had a light on the other side, we could look right through that guy. Very similar. You can see that these stones are of different sizes. They weren't all tumbled together, but they do recommend using different sizes of stones in the same barrel. Helps distribute the grit better. Here's another example of a very imperfect example. An example of an example. So it's one of those stones that would have been discarded. These fissures here, they can trap grit. So a big problem with a stone like this is that it's very hard to make sure that you've got all the grit cleaned out of a gap like this. So a serious tumbler probably would not attempt to tumble this one. But I don't think I did this one, but again, I love the contrast of the crystalline area inside the gap and the smooth areas on the surface. Makes for a very interesting piece. This starts to look a little brown, doesn't it, to you? Maybe an earth tone section will be needed here in this part of the frame. Like this guy. Look at that. It's almost like droplets of water, isn't it? And that's tiger eye, certainly, right? It's interesting that the iridescent striations are oriented in this direction. But there's also these dark stripes that go in the opposite direction. What wonderful geometry. I've always been captivated by tiger eye and cat eye. They just seem to have a magic to them somehow. Now I think this is probably a candidate for our gray, black and white pile, although I'm seeing a little hint of color in this section here. It's almost like a shark's tooth, isn't it? Kind of a squat shark's tooth. We'll put him here as a transitional piece between our neutral section and our earth tones. We only have a few left. Oh, this has that same iridescence in it, doesn't it? But other things as well. Yeah, I love the grab bag kind of variety rocks. Now this, I think, has to be up in our blue-green section, doesn't it? What a playful variety of blues and greens and whites we have here. Let's make some space up here. Go like that. That only leaves these three. And I think they're in close to the right spot anyway. Look at this clear area to the right here, but still with all the little cracks and inclusions. Anybody have an idea what this fellow is? It's one of those topics I kind of wish I was a little more educated about. Maybe it's my inner kid that still wants to know a lot more about these. Well, so how did we do? Let's see if we can kind of tighten up these patterns. I think I'm fairly happy with these groupings. This would make an interesting jigsaw puzzle, wouldn't it? A big puzzle of that arrangement. Do you guys like those kind of puzzles? Those big puzzles with kind of hard to define features inside them. I haven't done one of those in a long time. But that's another example, isn't it, of that focusing, that pushing away the multitasking for a little while and just try to do one thing for a moment. Thanks for helping me sort these, guys. I hope you have allowed your mind to quiet just a little bit, and I hope you've gotten as much relaxation out of the simplicity of this exercise as I have. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Take care, friends.